say it's 40 people
to 200. Wow. Someone's getting fired in their next performance cycle.
Oh my God. It's me.
I knew it.
Quick, fudge the books. Hello, welcome to Cloud Unplugged. I'm Jon Shanks.
And I'm Jay Keshur.
Cool, and we are going to be talking about basically platform team sizes. How big should platform teams get, or generally cloud?
Why they are so big, right? And we've seen a bunch of like anti-patterns, I guess, in the industry where platform teams that are supposed to be small and lean, small teams delivering value as platform engineers ends up being 100, 200 person organization just in itself trying to do something on behalf of developers. So what causes that? Why does it happen? What little subsections of that platform org do they have and why?
Yeah. Do you know why?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to make it up.
Yeah, because I think we keep seeing every time to time. I mean, it's not in loads of places, but there'll be places where the team has just gone exponentially large.
Exactly.
And there'll be a huge amount of engineering and different roles and different responsibilities going on all inside of it all, which maybe isn't particularly cost effective and also not the most optimal way to operate for cloud delivery or developer self-service. I
think overall there's probably like a few different, even like, headings as to why those teams end up being so big, right? So you can almost categorize like the situation that organization is in. So like the first situation might be that they run some ridiculous scale of a service where they need that level of complexity. So let's say, someone like Netflix or Spotify or a trading system where every little change that they make to say, even really, really noddy things like changing an instance type might have huge impact, right? So you might have, in those certain scenarios, you might have teams that are aligned to, say, compute, or teams that are aligned to networking, or things that could be optimized, and so and really kind of made a discipline in its own right. And that's one kind of side of the spectrum, like those ridiculous engineering organizations that are just have so much scale where every single little change that they make has such a huge impact. And then the other...
Sorry, ridiculous in the sense of the scale is ridiculous.
The scale is kind of ridiculous.
Not the organisation is ridiculous.
No,
those ridiculous organisations.
Ridiculous amounts of choice with all that music and video.
Sorry, you're saying that sometimes businesses will like split on, say, some technology element, or like networking, which is more of a principle. So it'd be like networking people, and
I think when it becomes
segments of engineering.
I think when you're doing something so insanely well, you can then almost make it its own practice. So I'm gonna go really ethereal here for a second, just bear with me, right? Before like maths, science, physics, like biology, all of these things existed. They were theories, like it will be a philosophy. Everything starts off as philosophy, and then once you kind of learn it a little bit more, once you get into the art of it, once you start putting some guidance and rules around how that thing exists and why it exists, and you group that activity and you name it and you call it a subject. So like maths, now it's a thing. It's not philosophy anymore. It's maths. And then even further, you might have like statistics or all of these different like incarnations of the wider subject. And I think that the same sort of thing is happening in these wider organizations, in these massive organizations, where you've got these really complicated disciplines that have niched down so much that the thing that they're doing can just be called that compute or networking or whatever, because the things that they do are really low level.
Right.
Does that
make sense? True?
Yeah. That is true. Yeah.
But for like those companies that have scale. The technology scale, because I guess there's technology that's designed for scale, and then which networking is, because it's everywhere and you can actually scale networking reasonably easily.
Can you? I would say that's one of the hardest things to scale with
Well, it
low
depends.
latency and, you know, like with...
But again, it's designed for that.
Hugely impactful, right? So Amazon, as an example, of course they will have a team that is there just looking after all of the different components of each product, probably even the networking of those layers.
Yeah, so there'll be like edge cases where even, I guess there's a lot of protocols that exist that are kind of done, you know, where they're not, unless you're writing your own protocol or something because the ones that you have are inefficient. That's one scenario.
Yeah.
But the rest of the stuff is an infrastructure itself, as in hardware, that's offering the capability of managing that scale, not necessarily people. So I guess it depends where you put in the engineering effort. If you're putting the engineering effort in manufacturing something that can cope with your unique circumstances, which is kind of what Amazon's done. Got their own, even manufacture some of their own chips and all sorts, right? So that's a very extreme set of circumstances.
Yeah,
but that's got into hardware then and actual engineering from
and software. Yeah, massive.
Yeah, and software.
Yeah,
but
crazy.
but we're not talking about those. We're talking about platform engineering teams.
Yeah.
That have ended up lots of people. But you're saying that you end up...
Platform engineering teams that have had to niche in so much so to create kind of competitive advantage where, well, what they think maybe is competitive advantage. And there's probably something in that, right? So I'm sure everyone under the sun to a certain degree is like, oh, my organization's unique.
Yeah, snowflake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're like thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I want to have a competitive advantage in this like really commoditized thing, load balancers or whatever it is. And most of the case, that's not needed, I'd say. But you don't know every single business type. So I'm saying in those certain scenarios where they know they can prove with data that those things are absolutely a competitive advantage, or, you know, the investment massively outweighs the benefit that they get from those things, then yeah, of course, it makes sense to segment that down in that way.
But segment what? Sorry, I'm still...
The organization, the people that they have within the platform organization, let's say.
Because platform engineering, what you're talking about is saying that if there's something really specific that business needs to achieve that requires unique engineering at that stage, then it might be justified because the engineering isn't general purpose at that point, as in the requirement is so unique that it justifies needing to engineer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but in this instance, but some of that, even still, like to end up with such high teams, that's a lot of unique things that you must have going on to have such a large team where you basically are engineering so much uniqueness that you need so many people, if you see what I mean. Because otherwise, some of it's got to be general purpose, as in the requirements can't be that bespoke for everything for those organisations that are, unless it is, I don't know, that's what I'm asking. But I've know examples where definitely there was off-the-shelf things that would have definitely met those requirements, but they've engineered their own, their own service meshes even though there's lots of service meshes out there, and they've created their own, and the requirements weren't unique to justify creating their own. And
that happens all, like, I think that's like the standard of tech is something doesn't fit, like something,
like one thing,
the smallest thing, like, it doesn't have the right image in this place. It's like, you know, massive investment because engineers want to play with new shiny things or build something. Yeah, it's like what's that metaphor? If you're a hammer, you know, everything looks like a nail, right? Yeah. So when you're an engineer, it implies that you're building things, engineering things. That's what you're always going to do.
Yeah, they get people enjoy engineering, so they'll find a reason to engineer.
Exactly. But we're saying that there is valid in these certain scenarios. There is valid reason that they can prove in these organizations that mean that the engineering that they have is aligned to actual business value.
Is that a question?
No, that's just a statement. I'm just like, just level setting.
Talk about it.
No, that's just one.
Cool. All right, it's the end then. Apparently, it's a legitimate reason for why this happens. The end. That's the end of that conversation. But if people disagree with that, by all means, get in touch and maybe we could discuss a bit. For now, our assumption is
nice one, John.
Yeah, it's justified. The end.
So that was like, you know, at the, you know, 100, 200 person team. Sorry. And if you scale it back down to the sort of level that we were talking about, which is the sort of 6 to 12 person platform engineering teams, because that's probably that's the norm, right? There's a small kind of agile team on one end of the scale that's doing something probably even smaller, maybe like 1 or 2 people in a platform engineering function, all the way to say 100, 200 people in a massive business unit called platform something or other.
Yeah. So there's like, I think principally what you're saying is when it's unique, it's fine. If if the business makes money out of you making those things unique,
Super unique,
because it's part of the business model, as in like you've got to engineer that stuff because it makes money to do that, then it kind of makes sense because it's part of the business. Yeah. But if it's more like facilitation on driving an outcome, and some of that outcome's just commodity anyway, like getting access to something or monitoring, logging, like all the general things that you know is part of the software development lifecycle. Yeah. There's a bunch of software development lifecycle things that just exist. And they're general, you know, you can generalize as pretty much most of it. And then there might be unique things that somebody might need. But rather than, there's no need to probably, because if you think about how many software businesses there are, to assume that you need to re-engineer each time for every single company.
Oh no, you're supposed to build your house every single time from scratch.
True.
You can't just buy bricks and you can't just buy Lego. Of course you need to build it.
It can't possibly be right when you've got insane numbers of people. There's something wrong when you've got people doing things that really are just part of SDLC things that should, there's bound to be better ways and better patterns is what this is about, isn't it?
I guess there's anyone that has a team like that has, you know, because there's a cost of almost doing nothing, which is you carrying on with the size and team that you have. And a lot of people almost don't think about that, right? Like they think there's a decision they have to take to grow or shrink, but actually they are making a decision to stay as they are, which is a huge cost to the business. And that in itself is like it's up there, like there's, you know, as a decision that's sort of been made, but people don't necessarily always clock that that's happening, I'd say. But anyway, back to your point, which was are there better ways of doing things? There's got to be.
Yeah.
Right. So what are those but better ways? Like what advice would you give if you were kind of creating, if you were brand new, you've got a new company that's got, say, I don't know, 100 software developers, write it, you know, split into lots of teams and create it, and you are then trying to standardize some of those functions so that those developers can effectively ship applications securely. What was the first thing that you would do as a sort of platform team, or even creating that platform team?
Set a budget.
Nice. Yeah.
Probably suppose I would do, because that will keep me honest on like how much spend we want to commit to the team in relation to what the business revenue is we're expecting. So
because it will have a trade-off, right? Like you can't just say yes, this has infinite value, therefore my budget is
just infinite.
All of it. Yeah, exactly.
So you have to be a percentage of the revenue. Obviously, it's going to be an OPEX cost, right? So you'd have to work out what the budget of that OPEX is and then set expectations about what you're working with. So that would be something I would probably want to do first, because then I can work with what the boundaries are. Then I know.
And how have you, like the budget? Is it just like a one-off budget? Is it an operational budget? Like how would you think about that?
So excluding cloud spend, probably, which is obviously that's more project driven, as in that's consumption based. So I'm just thinking about the team first, because that's what we were saying. As in, like we've said, the team size is an issue. So I need to know what I'm confined by operationally. So taking away the kind of operational costs for cloud, which is going to yin and yang, and there's efficiencies you could do there. That's a whole different conversation. But if I'm not part of that, then obviously the team's OPEX, and I'd have to work out then what the demand for the team is, what the expectations of that team are, and then what the cost is of that team that I'm allowed to then work out what I'd even do. I mean, I don't know how much it would necessarily change, because I'd never be the type of person to want to just go and hire loads of people just for the sake of it anyway. So, but I guess it helps you confine.
Who's the first type of person you're hiring? Like, if you're starting from scratch, like what skill set would you look for first? Because you don't really even know
It depends. Is this
properly what the problem
depends
is.
where
maybe.
the company is, I suppose, and the type of business.
Yeah.
Really, it's a hard one to
Right.
answer without knowing more specifics. Obviously, without like looking at the business, because it might be that you might want an executor, as in like someone that can just get going with something quickly and set direction first, just to
With
rather
what
than-
with what skill set though? Because an executor could be engineering, it could
As
be
it-
like
it's all-
research, it could be UX or DX as it's commonly called now, developer.
Well,
experience.
I wouldn't go too grandiose. So I think it depends what I'm presuming there needs to be some outcome of something somewhere for somebody, unless we're all
Yes.
just theorising and
Yes.
researching.
Someone needs an outcome.
Well, because there's engineering that's going to be happening in the business, right?
Yeah.
So me getting a researcher isn't necessarily going to help the engineers deliver.
Mm.
So I probably would not opt for things that aren't going to directly bring value
Yeah,
to
that's
people.
right.
So
Cool.
if that isn't the case and we're starting from scratch and there's no devs,
Mhm.
then that's a totally different perspective altogether, obviously, because the engineering functions may be really early, in which case you might have to do very much anyway because it's all alpha-y. So you obviously don't want to spend loads of time and money on something that's more R&D for the business. So I'm assuming there is,
Really though, because you want a safe space for
but it doesn't need to be
engineers.
too safe at the point of R&D. I guess
why not?
because it's not got any customers or users, so
But
monetizing,
they've still got data potentially.
not everyone's
right.
using it.
Well, depends what it is that you're doing. Like if you're there and it's R&D, but you're taking in lots of data from lots of different places,
That's what I'm saying.
because that's
It depends.
on the situation.
There's no. It's like impossible to answer
Yeah.
the question
Okay.
without the context of the business, because
Yeah.
obviously there isn't a one size fits all with anything. But I'm going to make some assumptions that if you're into platform engineering, there's some element of need already in the business. I'm just going to make an assumption that you've got something that is already being shipped, and you can justify investment on supporting those things in the business, and that there's an element of pressure for you to deliver in relation to the demand of the business. So the demand's there, and now you need to optimize how you're going to facilitate it. One option is I'm just going to go into market, go to recruiter, and get 5 engineers in the team.
Nice. Let's come up with 5.
Just like an arbitrary number.
Okay, cool.
That is an option that I can just hire. So say I can work out, maybe it's like tickets or something, or
Yeah.
people like, however I'm managing the requests coming in. Or maybe it's because there's 5 brand new projects and therefore there's 5 engineers because it's 1 per project, and I've ratioed like a 1 DevOps per project or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not based on any science specifically is what I'm saying. So that is a route.
Yeah.
Or you can look at common patterns, standardizations, like what you want to enable developers to work with, and then actually creating consistency, which is what platform engineering is. Then I'd probably want to work out first the commonality between everything, standardize all the commonality as quickly as I could so it's more commodity and fast, and probably look at what's on the market or what's out there.
And let's say you have built this thing now, right? You've built a platform because you've hired some engineers, and now you've got, I don't know, let's say you've got 100 software developers that you're supporting, and that's maybe split up into 12 to 15 teams, the average sort of team size being. Some of those workloads might need 24/7 support.
Cool.
Does that? Yeah. And you've only got 5 people to do that. Do you think that is enough? Like, would you need more if you were like,
Well, it depends what this platform is. So if the platform's bought,
if the
then
platform-
I might have 24/7 support for the platform. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Like commodity.
No, sorry, you've built something. You have
right, I've
built
built
something.
something.
With these 5 engineers. You have actually built something. That's
So I've built a platform.
because what we're talking about really is just connecting to the bigger picture. Why these teams or companies end up with 100 people, 150 people or whatever in the platform like area within their business. And of course you wouldn't ever end up in that area if you've bought something.
Right, so
right?
when you
That's
asked
crazy.
me what I would do,
Yeah, it's literally
you
if
didn't
you've
really
built
want to know
something.
what I would do. What you wanted to know is what wouldn't I have done? Because that's the situation they're in, rather than asking me like, so what would you do
exactly.
to avoid
Well,
that situation?
I'm
It's
trying to get you.
It's the reverse.
It's
the
the
inverse of what it probably should happen. What you're saying is what probably won't happen. You're saying, yeah.
Kind of.
Otherwise,
so
I've just.
I'm saying
avoiding.
let's work backwards to figure out how they've gotten to where they are. and the situation that they might have been in.
So our assumptions then are they probably don't have a budget.
Because they've spent it all.
Because you wouldn't justify that amount of people. They're building loads of things.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
They're throwing resources at the problem all the time.
Yeah.
They're like probably engineering bespoke solutions that are probably already engineered in the community.
Bespoke.
Yeah.
Nice. Not C-spokes.
Bees. Lots of bees on spokes. So there are loads of like custom engineering happening across the business in pockets, and then the supportability is then what you're saying. The more custom engineering you do, the more support you're going to end up creating for yourself, right? Because there's a cost of ownership at that point. Like you own
tech debt.
Yeah, you
Once
own
you
this
build
engineering.
it,
it's yours.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not somebody else's.
Exactly.
It's your business that owned it because you engineered it.
Yeah.
So you can't outsource that.
And tech debt is a risk.
Yeah,
so you
want to.
So you want to support it, and then you probably want to.
Yeah, because if it goes down,
exactly,
it's business affecting, right? So
Yeah.
if people are depending on it, then you've now got to invest in it because people depend on it to be efficient and effective because you've engineered something that everyone's aligned to.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And also, like maybe politically as well, you probably don't ever, because you are now this central, behemoth of a thing that other teams rely on to get anything out, right? So you don't ever want to be an excuse for them not getting something out, right? So you're probably going to over egg your need. So like, I don't ever want to be a reason. I don't want to be a reason for team A over there saying that they can't ship because some functionality hasn't been built, or the platform is down, or whatever else. So you're like, just give me another 8 people, and they'll do the monitoring of the platform.
So what would you look for
like
then? So if you were to go in a business to identify, I guess, a lack of optimization in a company, to say if you were looking for, you had to like go through a company to see how it's organized.
Yeah.
What would be the things you'd be looking for in terms of organization structure for the platform engineering? Yeah, so if you were to look for things in a business of like inefficiencies, like patterns of things you'd be wanting to identify, basically.
Sure.
Like either if it was like, what would you be looking for to kind of see where you could optimize, where you'd be like
make efficiencies.
Yeah, if you were like thinking about how do I make this platform team more efficient?
So one, to even know whether or not I can whether there's an opportunity to make it efficient, is to understand how much it costs, right? And you could do that probably even from looking at the sort of external, if the company is trading, is making money or whatever, you could probably look at the financial books and just be like, I know
this isn't, you've been brought in, say.
Oh, okay, great. But that's still a thing, right? So let me look at the operational cost of a company, right. and like to get a level deeper, that might be a ratio of people that are actually delivering business value, so the developers, people that are working on the thing that they're actually selling or making money on or whatever, versus the number of people that have to just support that thing, right? If that is like a crazy ratio, then there's an opportunity there.
And what would a crazy ratio be?
I think anything where it's like under 20, which, like, speaking to a lot of people, seems quite high.
But as a ratio to how many? So what?
So, like,
percentage? Say you got 200 devs, what would be the percentage?
So even 5%, I think, is too high, right? So right. I think even if you've got
for 10 people to that 200, right?
Yeah.
What you're saying?
Yeah.
You still think that's quite high?
I think 10 people to 200 is way too high. I think that there is. I mean, this is maybe a bit of a controversial opinion, but it's. All of these things are commoditized, and you shouldn't need 10 people to like develop and deliver services. There are things out there that you could just get.
Say it's 40 people
to 200. Well, someone's getting fired in their next performance cycle.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's me.
I knew it.
Quick, fudge the books.
Make that 40 just to 4.
Can we knock some zeros off this just for Jay? Just come over to my team. Just only have 4 people in the office when you walk in.
Yeah, exactly.
Just 4.
Yeah. The other 16 are like hidden away in the toilet somewhere.
So, say it's 40, and there's obviously 200 developers
That's crazy,
and you've got
isn't
40.
it? Doesn't it feel like that seems ridiculous?
Yeah, it is quite high.
Yeah.
So what would you look at? Like, what questions would you be either in your own head or to the person asking to be like, why it would be 40? I guess you wanted to know what the people are doing, right?
So I would think of that as a one, obviously understand the cost. That's the main thing. But then try and figure out what the value that they are delivering. So if there's 40 people, presumably they are engineering things. So if they're engineering, the standard like metrics come in, right? So let's say when you make a change to the platform, how long does it take you to get that change from your machine to in production so the developers can use it? The actual metrics for a developer as well, like let's say a developer is like trying to use a new cloud service or something like that, from the time that they have asked for that resource to them actually getting it, like what's that time?
But let's assume
how
you've
useful
got 40 people, it's really good metrics because there's a lot of people to engineer efficient, to be effective for the developers. So let's say that
it's amazing.
They're
it's
being
the best.
really effective, because they've got the engineering capacity to do a really good job.
Yeah.
Would you still want to optimize?
It kind of depends on where the company is to a certain degree. So let's say if they're at the kind of exploratory stage and they haven't quite figured out where they're making money and delivering business value, then it just seems ridiculously high. You probably wouldn't want to do that, right? So straight away you'd be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. If you're kind of at a different stage, so you're kind of expanding and you're building new functions, you're building new teams, you're getting into bigger sort of markets and things like that. You're growing before you've had the demand. So in that case, it might make sense. Maybe they're growing to say 40 people. They've got 200 devs now, but that's going to go up to 800 devs, and then the ratio is there.
What about if they're like global?
Oh yeah, exactly, right.
So that changes things though, or not? So
potentially, because they might need to have 24/7, not on-call support, but like at your desk, you're just working 24/7, and then straight away that is like pretty much divided by 3, right? Or however many shift patterns you're running. So things like that. So that's the kind of expand scenario that company would be in. But then if you're in the keeping the lights on or the extract kind of phase of that company, where you're just like trying to extract as much value out of the way that company is currently operating, then and you're not making any big changes, so you've got 200 developers, you've got 40 people just operating the platform, then you'd probably be like, no, that doesn't seem right. I can definitely do this more efficiently because all I'm doing is keeping the lights on. You can't need 40 people to keep the lights on, like, no matter what you're doing. It just seems ridiculous.
Yeah, that is very, very high.
Yeah.
I guess it depends though on what's there, but 40 is just a bit ludicrously.
Why have you hired these 40 people, John? Like, you've hired them. Tell me, what are they doing?
I said I was allowed to hire. You said I had a really big budget. So I was like, spend some of this money.
Spend it all.
Yeah, just spend some of this money.
I mean, it makes sense now. That feels like the John attitude.
Yeah,
Let's just spend it.
All this.
Yeah, exactly.
So but I guess out of those 40 you mentioned like support, so you're going to need people on call presumably for things. You're going to have to work out what the platform is, work out what components there are there. So say, because I guess there's trying to work out how much you've offset operational risk to obviously services, or how much you've brought in-house. So I suppose there's that. So if you've brought everything in-house, you've got like a Kafka team and a MongoDB
the value that
team,
you're delivering to the business.
You've got teams operating and running like these specialist technologies back to the business. You've got these are cloud services that do very similar thing. Like you're almost competing with the cloud vendors internally. So it's trying to work out what you're looking for on how they've organised themselves and what
the scope of the platform.
What problems you've ended up trying to solve in that platform team, and then the structure of it. And then if there's then on call for those teams, then obviously you could kind of end up seeing like, I can see why you've got to 40 now, because you've basically duplicated effort for what might have been a cloud service, or you could have removed operational risk and cost from the business to something that is like that's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Could though end up more expensive. Who knows?
But I guess in those scenarios, like once you've built something, you know, just like anything, you kind of explore and then you figure out that that's the thing, that's the solution that you need to go down, right? Like I need to build my own cloud service, or I need to build my own sort of database as a service internally because nothing quite supports the requirements that I have. What I have a problem with is that activity is only done once. It's a huge cost to the business, and generally that activity is only done once. Whereas,
what do you mean? So,
as in, it's done
at the time of the requirements.
It's done at the time of the requirements, and it's not done as an ongoing thing. Like to look at the kind of wider ecosystem, because there's so much innovation that's happening. It's happening everywhere, and these companies that have a lot of money, whose job it is to innovate and sell those innovations at a usage model, or whatever, like the cloud vendors. So when those requirements are like first understood, and then the solution that they've made up is, oh, I'm going to go off and create my own service. Great, fine, do it. You know, if you really have to do it, you might also like maybe put in a feature request, or, you know, ask someone else that has a reason to do it to do it, because maybe they didn't have the idea. Anyway, so you go off and build it, and then let's say it's like a year, 2 years later, you have this team of say 10 people that are doing this database as a service or whatever it is. But then now there's like, I don't know, 4 other companies that are doing that as their main business objective. That their thing that they do is build database as a service for other companies to consume, and it's a really like efficient cost saving thing to then adopt. You don't necessarily always compare those things, right? Because now there's going to be like job protectionism and all of it. Like you're probably going to be like, yeah, but they don't have that one feature that we developed 6 months ago, because they're, you know, on a journey themselves. But you've got this massive cost that's now like you've just got it on your books forever until you do something about that thing. And I think that happens in these organizations more often than not.
Yeah. Which is what leads to the big teams.
Which is what leads to the big teams, exactly.
So it might have been that maybe there wasn't that managed service at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
By the cloud vendor.
Yeah.
So then they kind of had to roll their own.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they're not reevaluating, and the cost of change. I suppose what's funny is blended teams. You know, when you haven't segmented, so you can't say this is the Kafka team. You know, when it's a blended team, then it's hard to pin down where the effort is.
Yeah, exactly.
So you might be like, well, I've kind of got this. It's hard to then pinpoint where it isn't efficient.
Yeah. Because
then it'd be like, well, you know, the cost of transitioning is going to be all this effort, and what's the point? Because we're going to do it, and then it's the same. It's Kafka, or it's just the cloud's managed service anyway.
Yeah.
But it's the same team size, as in like, because you can't really work out effort necessarily on how much time and energy is going on it. And then the illusion might be that not much time and energy goes in it anyway, or whatever people
exactly
try and justify.
Because there's always a narrative that you can put over it.
Or it's normally recency bias, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like they haven't done anything on it that week.
Yeah.
It feels like to them,
we don't spend any time on this.
Because you're like,
So
I don't
true.
think we spent much time on it this week.
Yeah.
And then someone asks like, how much time do you think you spent? Like,
Nothing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because it's like you can't really recall
Yeah.
everything in the moment. So you tend to have like a bias, don't you, on where you feel the effort's going week
Very
by
true.
week.
Yeah.
So I think those are like common things. So you probably have to work it all out, like how much the cost is of this thing, how much time and energy is going into it, what's the risk, and then can you just get rid of it?
And then does that, I guess, is that cost giving you ongoing value, consistent value? Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, no,
that's it.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Jon says you should have, if you have a team of 200 developers, 40 platform
Just
engineers
minimum,
is what you need.
Minimum 40.
40.
Minimum numbers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I tell them that I've like, I don't work for anyone
No.
that doesn't have a minimum of 40 platform engineers.
And if you want help scaling, then Jon, exactly.
If
You want someone to manage those 40 people.
And then a bus arrives. with 40 engineers on it, and I pull up, the doors open, we all come out.
Nice.
Yeah, and quickly start doing all stuff like, right, let's do some platform engineering, let's go, and that's it. That's how it works.
Do you need like a platform engineering union at that stage when it's so big? You know what I mean?
You'll see the buses go around the estates picking people up. Before.
The estates?
Exactly.
Where are you hiring these people from?
Because we house them.
Right.
You need them all.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
it's a campus.
Yeah, it's a campus. You need them ready to go. Yeah.
Nice.
It's a minimum requirement. Yeah, 40.
Yeah.
You can't just get 40 like that.
It's not just you build it, you run it. You're
Gotta
now living it too. It's a campus. Yeah.
I'm not that good. I'm like magic 40. I've got to have them on a campus ready to go. You never know.
Are they all like breeding and creating more platform engineers?
Yeah.
Is that how it works
I
in this little
go
world?
quite as weird and
okay, cool.
You know, it's not a laboratory.
It feels like a cult. You've created a platform engineering cult in your business.
Well, you know, some people might call it.
Are you the leader?
Some people just call it, you know, driving outcomes. It depends. Depends on your perspective, Jay. Just depends on your perspective. But yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. To be fair, I think we kind of covered
what the cult does. No,
is it like the people, how people get into those traps of?
Yeah, it's huge teams. I think what is hard though is a lot of organizations making teams efficient and you know, moving skills or people around into delivering business value in different areas is really tough. Like managing and having a critical eye on the value that those business units are delivering and doing something about it is really hard, because it means that, you know, there's potential risk of jobs, there's or skills that you might be able to find in the market of what you now need versus what you had at the time. So it's like you could definitely see why those things happen, and why, because they've happened, the problem just kind of exacerbates and it just like snowballs a little bit, because people hire people and there's like, you replace people once they're gone or whatever out, rather than sort of like naturally, you know, let it churn down, or because you're not dealing with sort of interesting problems for those platform engineers to then fix or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think though it depends, like maybe there's I don't know whether I'm just being biased, but like now you could say, like we were talking before, weren't we, about like bullish markets, bearish markets, things like that, right? So I guess now it's kind of clearly bearish.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So people are laying people off, people are optimizing. So I think market conditions sometimes kind of change behaviors, and people are maybe more open-minded to it. You know, like feels like things are going to happen. They might think like innovation, like you get people in and it's going to be innovative, and you know there's a buzz, and so there could be a bit of a fallacy on it bringing value because you're not worrying too much about the bottom line at that point in time.
Is this like weird tech optimism that happened like during COVID? It's a bit off topic, but it's interesting. So during COVID, there was this real sort of tech optimism that happened, I'd say, right? Like 2020, 2021, all of this tech, you know, people were getting Pelotons and, you know, Netflix, the number of people watching Netflix, and all of the Amazon and all of these things just grew a ridiculous amount because people had time. And they were sitting ducks, so all they did was consume tech, consume. Yeah. And obviously all of the...
You couldn't do anything else.
You couldn't do anything else.
You won't even
get fat, like watch TV. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, which is radical if you think about it now.
Yeah.
Like you weren't allowed to even
go
anywhere,
more
do
than,
anything.
What is it, 2 kilometres from your house or something like that?
Yeah, there was even like crazy. A radius span of like how far you're allowed to go. And then like when you were supposed to exercise.
Exactly.
Even.
Unless you were like going to a fort to check your eyesight and things like that. That's fine.
But
But yeah, so all of those, like that tech optimism that happened, and all of these companies like decided to see those signals as, oh, this is just the world that we live in now, and it's just going to exponentially grow. Yeah. And so they had to obviously, you know, hire people, and now obviously that has come to a head a little bit because, you know, people are sort of back to their normal, not quite normal life. Nothing's back to normal after COVID, but at least that demand has been subdued to some degree, and so that tech optimism has died down a little bit. and now the market is reacting, right? There's letting people go, and other things are happening in the market to sort of put a lens on it where it's like opportunity, reality, and what it actually takes for the team to deliver on that the smaller opportunity that there is.
Yeah. You've got to be more creative when the conditions. It's like anything, isn't it? It's like food. Like some of the best foods came out of like the conditions of just scarcity of food, right? And what you had to use to make something tasty based on very little things. Yeah. And it's the same, isn't it? It's like the same principles that when you're constrained and the parameters are so constrained, you've got to be more creative on how you're actually going to deliver on that problem to the business. And that's really what innovation is at the end of the day. And I suppose it's how much you are allowed to do it yourself or how much you now need to lean on the materials around you to achieve that outcome. And I think it's just a slight shift where, if the conditions are pretty generous, then people might see the problems and just solve them. Whether there's a good alternative, whether there's something on the market, whether, it was the right thing or the wrong thing. Like, I suppose people will just do it because it's the easiest, obvious path. But then the conditions shift and it's like, no, you can't do that. Actually, these are now the parameters.
Kind of like you said there, as soon as you put some parameters over it, it feels like that's the greater potential for value, or
definitely the potential for more probability of innovation.
Innovation.
You've got to rethink the problem of how you might have thought about solving it.
And the easiest thing to do is, or the easiest and most common way that people solve problems in this space is by throwing people at it.
Yeah, always.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. People always throw people at a problem.
Yeah. Boom. Yeah. Here's a problem. Yeah. Here's a person. Take it. Take the person.
It feels faster.
Did you throw all of those 40 people at the problem, or is that how it worked?
We've got cannons.
Yeah. Oh, right. Cool. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. You weren't just doing shot puts.
Yeah. No, it's cannons. Cool. Depending on the range.
Yeah. Fair.
Buses if they're nearby. Cannons if they're quite far. We shoot the platform engineers out.
Wow. I think we're gonna have to take that snippet just to shoot the platform.
I can't be sued. No. So okay, I think so. Anyway, I guess what we're saying is, just to wrap up, because I feel we've kind of covered the topic a bit, is there's legitimate reasons at the beginning why these things happen, but they're probably not justified unless they're really unique set of circumstances where the business is generally making money from those things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But otherwise, people should be evaluating, and you think like even, what did you say, like 10 people to 200 is still quite high.
5% feels too high,
So, which is, I would probably agree. You could probably do more. Yeah. You could probably get that number down if you were to like lean on alternative ways to deliver. Yeah. So, but then at the same time, it's easy to fall into the trap, I think, was kind of the point of throwing people at problems, because it feels like the fastest route until the parameters are changed.
The fastest,
because you don't have to think about the problem then.
Exactly. It's not really the fastest. It's not the fastest route to solving the problem.
No,
it's the fastest route to offloading the problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It feels like the fastest route.
Yeah. Now I've hired a team to do it. Just give them some time.
I can tell people that.
Well, exactly.
You're like, what's going on with that thing?
Well, I've hired a team.
I've interviewed 4 people and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's another way to show progress.
Yeah, it's nuts, though. It's not progress. That's just like a thing that you did.
Progress, Jesus.
Yeah, we really need to change the way that we update on progress.
So 5 more
I did the thing.
hires
Great.
are coming.
Nice.
We're progressing really nicely on this. That's not the outcome. But I guess that's the problem. If everyone assumes that people are the solution, then you probably will be under the guise that you will like believe that hiring's also part of solving the problem. So you might look at it and be like, optimistically, be like, great, finally, we've got 5 new people joining. We can actually get something done. People will probably, but I'm sure people will probably think that way.
Do you reckon in the future, this is going to be again quite off topic, but do you reckon in the future there will be like entire businesses that have no one in them, not even an operational cost? So for example, like, you go in, you set up a business as a one-time thing, do all of the automation, set all of the things up, let's say a shop that runs itself with AI and all of this kind of stuff, and then you yourself, even as a CEO of the company or whatever, you exit that business and just let it run operationally. Do you know what I mean? So it has 0 people. That could happen, couldn't it? With all the tech and innovation that has happened nowadays, it's like we're getting closer and closer to just like excellence.
I mean, I have a theory that it will probably be able to happen.
But it won't.
But it won't, because consumption's based on people being employed and having money. So there's always going to be a cap, right?
Like capitalism, you mean?
Yeah, because if you don't have people buying things because they don't have money to buy anything, then there's a ceiling of like how much money there even is in the economy at that point. So for you to then not have any employees ever means that people aren't employed, which then means those people...
No, just that there will be businesses of that type, and there will be...
But there'll be everybody who'd want that. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it's like the most operationally efficient.
Yeah.
It's like, as in like in terms of cost.
But then, you know, capability will obviously factor in. So it might be, some people might be capable of creating those kind of utopian companies that has no employees, and then there might be the norm might still be like heavy employee footprint, solving problems that have already been solved in different ways because people still feel like solving problems through resources.
Yeah.
So because no one, you know, there's a spectrum, and that spectrum isn't, there's many spectrums. It's not just like operational efficiency. It might be like lifestyle choice, and you want to work with people, and all the other factors that there are. Like we think of things as just one lens because obviously we're tech and operationally focused, but it's there's so many reasons to
but the business drivers, if you can drop costs, you know, by outsourcing a load of things to something that does it with they'll have a cost, an operational cost, but the operational cost isn't people. Yeah. It's like a service.
Exactly, yeah.
And that service,
it'll be usage, consumption, API cost or whatever.
Than people, then obviously it'll be a hard sell to justify. Basically, this conversation we've literally just had under the lens of something else. Yeah, it would be hard to justify why to a business
ever have people.
Why you would go for like the least cost effective route, and why it's better for the business.
Yeah, totally.
So. But at the same time, you can't have people unemployed because then there's no money in the economy because there isn't much money. You see what I mean? At some point, it becomes a ceiling. There's a ceiling to everything.
You can only have so many of those companies in the world. Right?
Yeah, before it's problematic.
Yeah.
So I guess things have to be like, you know.
Yeah, true. Anyway, on that happy note, on that happy note,
saying like, I don't believe it's going to go that far because I don't think it can. So when people are like catastrophize on being like, oh my God, there's going to be robots everywhere, we're going to be all out of jobs, and you know, I think there'll be an element of where that'll start, but obviously then it hits ceilings. So
or it doesn't, and everyone you know, has universal basic income, all of the things
we're all
taken care of. We're all unemployed. You all have enough money to exist and potentially even thrive to a certain degree. I mean, look, we're just making things up here, right? So why not?
So in the utopian world.
Yeah, utopian world.
Yeah.
The world isn't like, you know, dying. There's no climate change. Like all of those things have stopped happening.
Yeah.
Cool. Fun. All right. So if anything, the takeaway from this episode is let's strive to have a no-person company and not build platforms.
Yeah, I think that was literally the takeaway. Yeah. So positive vibes.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
As always, if you have any questions, comments, please reach us at hello@cloudunplugged.io or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Cheers. Cool. Bye-bye.